a man suddenly discovers that his wife is a liar. In their wedding photo, his fingers are crossed, which is a gesture of praying for God's forgiveness. Truman then realizes that their marriage is fake. To verify his suspicions, he purposely says to his wife, "I'll cross my fingers for you," while she is at work. She is momentarily stunned but quickly adjusts her facial expression and smiles. Truman secretly follows his wife to find out the truth, unaware that every move he makes is closely monitored. It turns out that Truman has been watched by the entire world since his birth. 220 countries have been watching his growth through a live broadcast. His life is continuously filmed by hidden cameras and broadcast 24/7 with no edits. This program is called The Truman Show. The island of Eden, where Truman lives, is actually a giant movie set, and everyone in the town, except Truman, is a professional actor, including his mother and wife. The show has been airing for 30 years without interruption, with the director profiting greatly from the frequent advertisements shown during the broadcast. Truman, however, continues to live in the director's script, repeating the same daily routines. He greets his neighbors enthusiastically every morning with, good morning, oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night." Truman works as an insurance salesman, and one day, as he drives to work, an unknown object suddenly falls from the sky. He walks over to find that it's a light, which makes him wonder how something like that could fall from the sky. As he continues on the work, the radio broadcast unexpectedly explains that a plane just passed over the island and had a malfunction, but luckily no one was hurt. Truman believes the explanation, but the director is still not satisfied. He arranges for Truman's boss to send him to a neighboring island to complete an insurance deal. Truman is averse to the idea, telling his boss that he has a dentist appointment, but his boss insists, warning him that if he doesn't go, he might lose his job, as the company is preparing for layoffs. Truman reluctantly agrees. However, when Truman arrives at the dock, he has second thoughts and begins to feel uneasy. This is because, when he was a child, he and his father went on a boat trip that was struck by a violent storm, and his father fell overboard and has been missing ever since. This trauma has left Truman with a deep fear of the sea, and he has never dared to leave the island. Upon seeing Truman's reaction, the director is relieved, but on his way back, a homeless man catches Truman's attention. Truman's long-lost father suddenly appears and is quickly taken away by two strangers before Truman can react. As he tries to chase after them, the crowd seems to block him as if everyone is preventing them from reuniting. Back at home, Truman tells his mother about the incident, but she insists that it was just a hallucination caused by his longing for his father. Truman, however, is certain that he did not mistake the person. That evening, Truman goes into the basement and looks through old photos with his father. At this moment, his wife walks in, and Truman hurriedly puts the photos away and pretends to mow the lawn. His wife does not believe that his father, who has been missing for years, would come back. As she leaves, she tells him that they need a new lawnmower. Truman doesn't know that she's actually doing a commercial. After she leaves, Truman carefully takes out a bag containing a red sweater, which once belonged to his first love from college, Roland. Roland had clear, bright eyes, and Truman fell in love with her at first sight. They quickly became a couple, but whenever they went on dates, Roland always seemed uncomfortable, as if she were being watched. One day, Roland takes Truman to the seaside and tells him that everything on the island of Eden is fake, urging him to leave as soon as possible. Just as Truman is still confused, a man who claims to be Roland's father appears and forcibly drags Roland into a car. Roland's father says that she suffers from a mental illness and warns Truman not to believe her. They plan to move to Fiji, and when they part ways, Roland repeatedly urges Truman to leave the island. Roland disappears as suddenly as air, leaving behind only the red sweater she dropped on the beach. Over the years, Truman has searched everywhere for Roland, but she has vanished without a trace. Her face and voice are deeply imprinted in Truman's mind. Since he has no picture of her, Truman often tears off the faces of models from magazines, trying to piece together Roland's features from memory. Throughout the years, Roland has been watching Truman as well. When she sees that Truman is still thinking of her, she is deeply moved and sheds tears. One day, as Truman drives to work as usual, the radio bizarrely broadcasts details of his every move. "Boy, he'll be on you in about 90 seconds. Pops, make sure the coffee's hot. Okay, he's making his turn on Lancaster Square." The broadcast then explains that they accidentally tuned into a police channel, but this explanation fails to convince Truman. He begins to observe his surroundings and the people. It seems as though everyone is repeating their actions. To test his suspicions, Truman steps into the middle of the road, and just as he expected, a bus suddenly brakes in front of him. He confidently turns around, knowing that a car will soon pass by, and he stops it. Truman starts altering his routine. He runs into a hotel he rarely visits and discovers that the elevator is actually the show's control room. Panicked, Truman rushes to a convenience store and tells his friend Marlon about what happened. However, Marlon, too, is part of the show and is an actor. To quell Truman's doubts, the director arranges for Truman's mother and wife to accompany him while he looks through photo albums, trying to rekindle good memories. But Truman accidentally discovers a secret in his wedding photo. His wife's fingers are crossed, indicating that she was lying during their vows, seeking God's forgiveness. Truman realizes that his wife was never truly in love with him. He tries to confront her, but she tells him that there is an emergency at the hospital. Truman follows her to the hospital to investigate, but the staff and patients try to stop him. He manages to escape and reaches the operating room, where he sees the actors rehearsing. He quickly realizes that it's all part of the show. Truman decides to leave the island by bus, but the bus breaks down on the way. He understands that someone is trying to prevent him from leaving, so he gets into his car and tells his wife that he predicts a man with flowers and a Volkswagen Beetle with a dented fender will appear. His prediction comes true, and Truman realizes that everyone around him is just part of a script. He hopes his wife will tell him the truth, but she plays dumb and denies knowing anything. Truman decides to leave the town by car, but when he drives out of his driveway, dozens of cars appear out of nowhere, blocking his path. Truman deliberately says out loud that he will take another route. After going around in circles, he returns to the same spot, where the road is suddenly clear. Truman knows that someone is controlling his movements. They soon arrive at a cross-sea bridge, and Truman's wife, knowing of his fear of the sea, tries to convince him to turn back. However, Truman slams his eyes shut and presses on the gas pedal, causing his wife to frantically control the steering wheel. Eventually, they safely reach the other side. However, a fire is blocking their way. Truman realizes it's another trick, so he accelerates, driving straight into the fire. To prevent him from continuing, the director arranges for a nuclear leak ahead, preventing all cars and people from passing. Truman is confused about how a stranger knows his name. He realizes it's all still a part of the setup. He ignores the barriers and rushes into the forest. However, he is caught and brought back home. When he returns, his wife resumes her advertising work, saying, "Why don't you let me fix you some of this new mocha drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of the mountain, Nicaragua. No artificial sweeteners." Truman can no longer bear it. He demands to know who she is talking to. She deflects, continuing with the commercial. Truman finally loses control and questions her about everything. His wife, terrified, picks up a fruit knife, but Truman takes it away and overpowers her. Truman is near a breakdown, desperate to know the truth. Just then, his friend Marlon arrives, and they sit on a broken bridge from their childhood. Truman tells Marlon everything that's been happening. Marlon, who has been Truman's friend since they were 7, is his last source of trust. After hearing Truman's story, Marlon reassures him, saying that no matter what happens, he will support Truman unconditionally. Truman feels touched by his words, but soon realizes that Marlon's comforting words are also part of the director's script. The director, knowing everything began with Truman's father, arranges for Truman's father to appear again. He explains that he was washed ashore on a remote island, where he survived, and has been looking for Truman ever since. The director quickly switches to a close-up camera shot, and tear-jerking music begins to play. The father-son reunion boosts the program's ratings to new highs. Everyone celebrates the crisis being averted, but Roland is saddened by Truman's failure. Truman's life seems to return to normal. He continues to greet his neighbors every morning, good morning, oh, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. However, Truman has other plans in mind. That night, as Truman sleeps in the basement, his unusual behavior catches the director's attention. The director orders the staff to zoom in on him and enhance the sound. They hear him snoring, but the director is not satisfied and instructs the staff to call Truman. The ringing phone disturbs Truman, but he remains still. The director begins checking Truman's basement footage and soon finds a clue. Under his blanket is a snowman doll, and a recorder is playing the sound of Truman snoring. The director instructs Marlon to investigate. Marlon pulls back Truman's blanket and discovers a hidden passageway. Truman had escaped from the basement. The director reluctantly pauses the broadcast, the first break in 30 years. All the actors in town are mobilized to search for Truman, and to assist, the director orders the sun to rise early. It turns out the sunrise and sunset are also controlled. Yet, despite all this, Truman cannot be found. The director then remembers Truman's fear of the sea and sends a team to search there. Sure enough, they spot Truman sailing a boat. To prevent Truman from leaving the island, the director activates a storm mode on the sea. Violent winds and rain hit Truman, but he remains undeterred in his quest for truth. Even when he is thrown into the sea, he continues to fight for the truth. The viewers at home are on edge. The director, moved by Truman's resolve, orders the storm to be shut down, and the sky clears. Truman sails on, reaching the edge of the sea, where his boat crashes into a wall. Truman desperately pounds on the wall, releasing 30 years of frustration and betrayal. He then finds a staircase leading to freedom. Just as he's about to open the door, the director's voice rings in his ear. The director confesses everything, saying, "I know you better than you know yourself. I have been watching you your whole life. I was watching when you were born, I was watching when you took your first step." The director wants Truman to stay. Everyone holds their breath, waiting for Truman's response. Truman smiles a healing smile and says, "In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night." He bows deeply at the camera as if closing the curtain on 30 years of his life. Despite the uncertainty of the future, Truman steps forward, walking toward the unknown. The viewers cheer as Truman leaves the island. Roland, overjoyed, quickly gets dressed to meet him. Truman, in his quest for love, pieced together her image using someone else's photo. In this cold and indifferent world, perhaps only his love for Roland was real. This love gave him the strength to search for the truth. And perhaps, in a way, we are all trapped in our own Truman Show. From a young age, we are set on paths, studying hard, getting into university, finding a good job, and marrying well. But what we should do is not blindly follow the crowd, but constantly think about our future. Life offers many unknown possibilities, and only by exploring different paths can we truly live life to its fullest.